A nuclear accident, not on the battlefield but in an experimental laboratory, resulted in exposure to radiation 10 times the lethal dose, followed by intense suffering and a catastrophic end. Driven by humanity's relentless quest for discovery, the same experiment was repeated, leading to a second accident with exposure to nearly 20 times the lethal dose of radiation, once again resulting in suffering and a devastating outcome. This is the true story of the Demon Core accidents. To truly understand the Demon Core, we must first travel back to one of the most extraordinary periods in human history, the final years of World War II. The year is 1944. The world is locked in the most devastating conflict humanity has ever witnessed. In secret laboratories across the United States, a group of the most brilliant scientific minds in history is working on a project that will forever change the course of human civilization. The Manhattan Project was more than just a scientific endeavor. It was a race against time, a desperate attempt to unlock the most fundamental secrets of matter and energy before Nazi Germany could do the same. Led by J. Robert Oppenheimer, this collection of physicists, chemists, and engineers represented the absolute pinnacle of human intellectual achievement. The United States was deep into the Manhattan Project, a secret mission to develop the world's first atomic bombs. By the summer of 1945, 2 bombs had already been dropped in Japan, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, forcing Japan's surrender in August of that year. But few people know that the US had a third bomb core ready to go. This third core, a 7-kilogram sphere of a newly discovered plutonium-239, was on standby, waiting to be used if Japan refused to surrender. When the war ended, the core was no longer needed for battle. But rather than destroy it, scientists saw a new opportunity. It could be used for research to better understand the nature of nuclear criticality. At the heart of their work was the newly discovered element, plutonium. Unlike other elements found in nature, plutonium was entirely man-made. First isolated and identified by scientists at the University of California, Berkeley in 1940. Glenn Seaborg, the scientist who led the team that discovered plutonium, later won the Nobel Prize for his work. Plutonium was unique. It was a synthetic, radioactive metallic element with properties that seemed to defy conventional understanding. Highly unstable, incredibly dense, and possessing an almost magical ability to sustain nuclear chain reactions, plutonium would become the core material for the most destructive weapons ever created. Nestled in the remote mountains of New Mexico, the Los Alamos National Laboratory was more than just a research facility. It was a secret city, a self-contained world where the most advanced scientific minds of the generation lived and worked in near total isolation. Security was paramount. Every researcher underwent extensive background checks, and communication with the outside world was strictly controlled. Central to their work were the criticality experiments, dangerous tests designed to understand precisely how and when a nuclear chain reaction would occur. These experiments involved manipulating plutonium cores to determine the exact moment when they would become critical, the point at which a self-sustaining nuclear reaction becomes possible. This was essential information for the future design of nuclear weapons. The more scientists understood about criticality, the safer nuclear weapons could be stored and transported. But these tests required pushing the core to the very edge of a reaction. And that was a dangerous line to walk. These were not theoretical exercises. Each experiment brought scientists tantalizingly close to potential disaster. The margins for error were microscopic, the consequences potentially apocalyptic. On the night of August 21, 1945, a 24-year-old physicist, Harry Dalian, was conducting a late-night experiment with the plutonium core that would later become known as the Demon Core. The purpose of this experiment was to see how much of the neutron reflection is required to push the core to criticality. Each bricks act like a mirror, reflecting neutrons back into the core. The more neutrons it reflects, the closer the core gets to sustain a chain reaction. Every brick matters. But experiments at the edge of scientific knowledge are inherently unpredictable. As Dalian moved to place another brick around the core, his hand slipped. The brick fell directly onto the plutonium sphere, fully enclosing it in a neutron-reflective material. It happens in an instant, but it's an instant that changes everything. In that split second, the core went critical. A burst of blue light filled the room, the telltale signature of a nuclear criticality event. Dalian immediately removed the brick, but the damage was already done. He had been exposed to a massive 510 rem of radiation, 10 times the lethal dose. Over the next days, he suffered an agonizing decline, his body systematically broken down from radiation poisoning. It begins with nausea, vomiting, and intense fatigue. His hands, being closest to the radiation source, swelled and blistered. Skin blackened, the tissue dies and necrosis sets in. Infection follows. His immune system collapses. His body was beyond saving. 25 days later, on September 15, 1945, he became the first scientist to die from a nuclear criticality accident. He was just 24 years old. This incident exposed the dangers of the criticality testing, yet it did not result in the complete cessation of such experiments. Safety protocols were revised, but as you'll see, human error strikes again. Fast forward to May 21, 1946. The core was still at Los Alamos, now with a darker reputation among scientists. Physicist Louis Slotin, a seasoned researcher known for his experience with critical mass tests, was leading a demonstration for several colleagues. Slotin was different from many of his colleagues. Where others were cautious, he was bold. Where some followed strict protocols, he was known to take risks. His colleagues both admired and feared his experimental techniques. On May 21, 1946, Slotin was conducting an experiment that would become legendary in scientific circles. The goal was to determine the exact moment of criticality for the plutonium core, the same core that had killed Dalian months earlier. His method was anything but standard. Instead of using sophisticated tungsten bricks, Slotin used a simple screwdriver to keep two beryllium hemispheres slightly apart around the plutonium core. It was faster and more intuitive than mechanical stands. This technique was unofficially known as tickling the dragon's tail, a name that would prove horrifically prophetic. Slotin had performed this experiment multiple times before. His confidence was both his greatest strength and his ultimate weakness. On this particular day, something went terribly wrong. The screwdriver slipped. The beryllium hemispheres closed around the plutonium core. Instantly, the room was bathed in a brilliant blue flash, the unmistakable sign of a nuclear criticality event. The room went silent. Slotin's reaction was immediate. He quickly pulled the hemispheres apart, potentially saving the lives of the other scientists in the room. But he had already received a fatal dose of radiation. To his colleagues, he calmly stated, "Well, that does it." Slotin was exposed to approximately 1,000 rem of radiation, nearly 20 times the lethal dose. The bystanders' colleagues received lower but still dangerous doses. Slotin began vomiting within hours, and over the next few days, his body swelled, his organs failed, and his brain pressure increased, causing hallucinations. Radiation sickness consumed him, causing multiple organ failures, skin discoloration, and unimaginable suffering. Witnesses revealed his skin looked like it was melting. On May 30, 1946, 9 days after the accident, he died. The second scientist claimed by the Demon Core. The deaths of Dalian and Slotin were more than just tragic accidents. They represented the enormous risks inherent in pushing the boundaries of scientific knowledge. The plutonium core, originally intended to be part of a third atomic bomb targeted at Japan, became known as the Demon Core, a piece of technology that seemed to possess a malevolent intelligence. These incidents led to fundamental changes in how criticality experiments were conducted. Remote handling techniques, multiple safety mechanisms, and far more stringent protocols became the norm. The story of the Demon Core is more than a cautionary tale about scientific hubris. It's a profound meditation on human curiosity, the pursuit of knowledge, and the incredible risks scientists are willing to take in the name of understanding our universe. Those scientists were not reckless thrill seekers. They were dedicated professionals working during an extraordinary moment in human history, facing challenges and making discoveries that would reshape our world forever. The Demon Core reminds us that at the frontiers of human knowledge, discovery always comes with a price. Sometimes that price is paid in human lives.